When we think of the French Revolution, we often think of events in Paris, marches, guillotines, and angry citizens storming palaces. But the ideas of liberty and equality didn't stop at France's borders. They echoed across oceans into the French colonies in the Caribbean, where millions of enslaved people lived under brutal conditions. This is the story of how the revolution confronted one of the darkest systems in human history, slavery. France's overseas colonies, especially Martinique, Guadeloupe, and San Domingo, were economic powerhouses. They produced sugar, coffee, tobacco, and indigo, luxury goods that were in high demand across Europe. But who worked on these plantations? Not free laborers, not citizens, but enslaved Africans kidnapped or bought from African chiefs, branded like cattle, and shipped across the Atlantic. This system formed part of the triangular slave trade. Ships left French ports like Bordeaux and Nantes for Africa. Slaves were purchased and then transported to the Caribbean. Plantation goods were brought back to France and sold for profit. Slavery wasn't just tolerated, it was central to France's wealth. As France declared the rights of man, a question arose: should these rights apply to the colonies? To the enslaved? Initially, the National Assembly avoided the issue. Why? Because powerful merchants and plantation owners, many of whom were based in France, feared losing their profits. They argued that liberty was for French citizens, not for African slaves. Debates raged. But for several years, no laws were passed to abolish slavery. The cries of equality and freedom stopped at the French coastline. But the revolution was evolving. As radical Jacobins came to power, they faced uprisings not only in France but also in the colonies, where enslaved people had begun to rebel. Fearing the loss of control and determined to stay true to revolutionary ideas, the convention in 1794 finally abolished slavery in all French colonies. For the first time, the French state legally recognized that freedom belonged to all humans, not just Europeans. This was one of the most progressive actions taken during the Revolution. But the dream of liberty was short-lived. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte, who had risen to power, reintroduced slavery in the colonies. Plantation owners had lobbied hard, and Napoleon prioritized economic gain over moral principle. To them, freedom meant the freedom to own slaves again. The enslaved were once more denied basic human rights, proof that even the most revolutionary regimes can betray their ideas when profits are threatened. It wasn't until 1848, more than 50 years after the start of the revolution, that slavery was finally and permanently abolished in all French colonies. The French Revolution planted the idea that all people are born equal, but its journey toward true equality was slow and inconsistent. The fight to abolish slavery reminds us that revolutions aren't just about speeches and laws, they are about who is included in the promise of freedom. From the plantations of the Caribbean to the streets of Paris, enslaved people fought their own revolution, demanding that liberty cross the ocean and recognize their humanity. Their struggle, and their eventual victory, remains one of the most powerful legacies of the French Revolution. In the next segment, we explore how the revolution touched even the smallest details of daily life, from how people spoke, to how they dressed, to what they read. Stay with us.